you have what it takes to be awarded as the best in the business? Here is your chance to apply. Head on over to our website, download the form and apply. If you face any troubles when applying or feel the need to get in touch with us directly, email us, call us, tweet at me directly at Sunanda_J or join our Facebook group. Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, 18-hour special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. This is the only daily MSME platform in the country, a show where you can voice your concerns and get answers to all your queries directly from our team of experts. We understand the issues that you, the MSME entrepreneur, face, and the show aims to bring you the most relevant and updated information on everything related to your businesses, to talk about the opportunities and challenges available for you, the MSME entrepreneur in the field of education. I have with me in the studio tonight Allwin Agnel. He's the founder of Pagal Guy as well as Prepathon. We also have Nanesh Gala. He's the managing director of Navneet Education, and Veenal Ali. She's the city director for Teach for India. Thank you all very much for speaking with us here tonight to talk about the opportunities and challenges which exist for MSMEs and entrepreneurs when it comes to education. Now, I know it's a vast space and there are different kinds of education, whether it's primary, middle, higher, technical. There's the use of technology. There is, not-for-profits who are involved in the field of education. So maybe it's best that we set the context for our viewers and talk about what and I want to throw this open to the panel to talk about what is the size of education and the opportunities really that exist in India for corporates. Is it possible to put a figure on how companies can be involved in the field of education in India?
So according to me, I would just talk about the content as a deliverables that should be not less than $5 billion in the country like India. Only when that number will come is still a guess, but opportunity and the need both are humongous.
I think the way to look at the market is there are 250 million students who sort of go to schools in India. That itself gives you a sense of the size of the market, and that is larger than most of the countries out there in the world. The size of the K-12 market is possibly by far the world's largest. You're sort of looking at a postgrad market, which is again the world's largest. So in terms, it's really tough to put a number value to it because there are multiple people in the value chain. You have schools who are making money, you have coaching classes, you have multiple people. But when you're sort of looking at an ecosystem where close to 300 to 500 million people in India are involved in some form of studying or improving their career progression, the market is nothing short of $100 billion plus market.
So despite the size of that market, it seems like not-for-profits are the ones who are really doing the job of plugging the last mile. Why is that? And do you think that government can work more effectively with not-for-profits and companies to ensure that the quality of education improves?
Definitely. I think it is a collective work, and I think to your first question, it's an entrepreneurial dream because I think to the point on numbers, right, and 76% of children don't even get into higher education. So if you look at and how diverse India is, like within a city of Mumbai, you have immense diversity. So if you look at India and different states, languages, culture, tribal, like there's so many problems that actually you can solve for, and I think the government has the most reach. So I think it definitely falls on the government's shoulder to take on the larger part of it. But I think the expertise, the resources, creativity can come in both from non-for-profits and private companies. So I think you get the perfect solution when all these three people are able to work collectively as opposed to work against each other.
Okay, so you're talking about the entrepreneurial journey, and I want to talk to you about your own entrepreneurial journey. You have Prepathon, of course, but you've also been known for very long in the education space as the person behind Pagal Guy. Just talk to our viewers about where the spark for that came about and what some of the learnings have been along the way.
So Pagal Guy was started by me in 2002, and that is a massively long journey. So sort of we have been around for almost 15 years now, which basically means we sort of predate most of the largest internet companies in India. And one of the biggest things that we've sort of learned over the period is sort of education is one of those spaces where it's extremely tough to get the product right. But if you do end up getting the product right, you tend to have a monopoly or a domination of the market for a significantly long period of time. Case in point, most of the internet companies in India or globally sort of survive between 3 to 5 years. And case in point, we were able to survive for more than 15 years, and we have been sort of profitable, tax-paying internet company with sort of, well, as a unicorn as such. And I think that is possible to do in the education space. The fact that we have been around for 15 years also has given us the opportunity to see how the landscape has changed over a period of time. Today, sort of almost 60% of the people who visit a website like ours use a mobile phone, and that wasn't the case even 3 years ago. Phenomenal increase in people's propensity to spend, phenomenal ability to sort of consume content. We today reach out to close to 1 million students on a monthly basis, and we have been able to do that without sort of raising any funding in Pagalgai. So I think the biggest thing for EdTech is to get the product right, and however long it takes, you just have to make sure that you get it right. And once you get it right, I think you have an extremely long runway.
Lots of interesting points that you're making, and I want to talk specifically about one of the things that you were saying, Vinil. You're talking about the challenges in education. Maybe I can ask you, Gyanesh, sitting where you are, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that we're seeing in the space of education right now, and how does corporate India then help solve some of those?
So the biggest challenge, I would say, is the investment in the infrastructure. Which is the responsibility of the government, I would say. Because of lack of investment in infrastructure, no schools are really getting good tech or digital content with them. Having said that, to your second question about corporates, I would say it is a big opportunity for all the corporates under the CSR arrangements to really contribute for the country, and that is the way I think most of the students in the country will be able to have the good quality digital content.
Would you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think I would say the biggest challenge is what do we expect out of education? Right now, if we look at our entire primary system, we're building memorization as a skill, right? We're looking at education as how do you get a job? How do you just get settled down? Versus I think education can widen your scope as an individual to become like a citizen of the world, right? To be able to actually solve problems of your own and others. And the ability to think critically is not something our schools are catering to right now. It is the memorization piece of it that it is. So I would say that is the fundamental biggest challenge. And the second is we need to be using student voice more in this. Like our students actually have far better solutions. They can give a class on entrepreneurship to a lot of people because they come up with such creative solutions. Like Einstein said, the problems of today cannot be solved by the same thinking of the people that created the problem. So I think how do we bring in student voice right from grade 3, 4, 5 into decision making, and how do you change that lens of adults that all of us can collectively find better solutions?
So one of the things that definitely needs to be fixed, I guess, and you were talking about delinking in some sense the kind of metrics that we have where it's based so much on classroom studying and not enough happening perhaps on the field, on the ground. What role can government play? It clearly has a very important role when education is concerned. They've been so closely involved with what is happening in education, but somewhere there seems to be that gap. How can that be fixed?
So I think we've taken a lot of strides forward with the National Curriculum Framework, which talks a lot about constructing knowledge, bringing values, using the context. I think where we're stuck is how we assess that 10th standard board exam. And then every teacher is trying to prepare children for that. So I think that government re-looking at how are we assessing the success of education, that's one. And then how do you enable that for teachers? Like I think we spoke about infrastructure. Currently in government schools, except for a classroom and a teacher and a blackboard, there isn't much else. Neither is there sports, drama, art, counselors. There isn't scope for a teacher to actually provide that sort of education. So I think one, making the space more holistic for children to develop holistically, and changing how we assess is what governments can do.
Okay. Allwin, maybe you can explain to our viewers about how exactly the model of Prepathon works.
So Prepathon is a mobile-first solution. Our approach is to personalize learning using bots. Bots are nothing but personalized helper applications that help a teacher sort of track students at scale. So currently we have close to 150,000 odd students who are using our applications, and the number of teachers who are possibly tracking them are just under 10. So effectively, technology solves two fundamental problems globally. When you sort of apply technology to transportation, you have Uber. The next level of technology might be sort of driverless cars. So technology does the job of first making things more efficient, and secondly enhancing your reach. When you're sort of taking a look at the first problem, which is of efficiency, I think technology can fundamentally help you to sort of reach out to 150,000 students and sort of manage their personal assessments at scale. You can sort of manage the motivation levels at scale. These are the problems that technology needs to first take a shot at. And Prepathon is our approach to sort of do that. We have tied up with close to 20 or 30 of the top brands in the country, and all of these brands have put up their courses on Prepathon because they simply feel that as a platform that we have built something that which they sort of could not. And building that technology is sort of extremely tough, and we had a fantastic team sort of to work with us to build that.
Manish, can you also talk to us about how you work in the area of education and technology? Explain to our viewers.
So primarily we work for grade 1 to grade 10, and that too on a state curriculum. I'm sure many of us would know that more than 95% of the students in India, they take the state curriculum. So we have products for that, right from grade 1 to grade 10, which we try and market to the schools with an expectation using them in the classroom. Having spent around 5-6 years in there, now we have already also given them, rather the students, the material that they can use at home, maybe on a pen drive or SD cards, as well as now recently we have launched our online platform, topscorer.com, and we have an app. So what we expect out of that is that students learn better beyond the classroom. It helps teachers to teach well. That is the product that we have created, and which we believe is fundamental requirement as on today in the country like India.
All right, let's take a very quick break on that note, but much more on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and we're talking about the opportunities and challenges in the field of education here in India. You were talking about how you work with the schools and you convince the schools about why it's essential to use technology. Yes. Maybe I can ask you to talk about why technology is critical for a country like India, because you were also saying about what 90 to 95% of all education is still in state schools.
The major issue in the country is the quality of education. I would say student-teacher ratio, as well as the quality of tutors. Now, the products that are required today, frankly, is the product which helps teachers to teach well. And that's what we have believed, and therefore we have provided them to use that in the classroom. It is very, very flexible. I would also like to add that in a country like India, we really do not need excellent technology. What we need is the user-friendly and flexible products. If those products are provided to the teachers, I'm sure they can really teach the students much better.
Okay. So even as we're talking about technology, Allwin, we see the primary use of technology as far as higher education or technical education is concerned. Companies like what Navneet is doing are still far and few in between. Why do you think more companies aren't using technology to solve the problems in education in the last mile, and how do you think that can change? You're talking about, for example, mobile, you're talking about online, but are those solutions and opportunities available only for technical and higher education?
I think these opportunities will become more and more applicable to the K-12 space as well. But pretty much the whole basis of technology is the availability of computing power and the availability of the internet. So that has dramatically altered pretty much all the growth you have seen in the last 10 years. Do students in the K-12 have access to a mobile phone or a computing device and internet? I suspect that will change over the next 5 to 10 years. And then you will sort of see that you are able to manage each and every student's performance. You sort of might be able to centrally look at, I think, these students in XYZ class seem to be all sort of stuck at math. Maybe we need to change the teacher. This kind of data is currently not available at all. So once you're able to sort of assess students and sort of centrally process and figure out, well, what are the next set of things that we need to do, I think we'll be definitely using technology sort of to teach students as well.
But isn't this going to be necessarily expensive to be able to use such solutions? And can a country like India really afford to have this?
No.
I don't think it would be expensive at all. Very simply, look at the cost of these cell phones. Started at 60,000 rupees, and now you have phenomenal phones at 5,000. Thanks to companies like Jio, you're sort of going to see that the cost of bandwidth is also dramatically going to drop. In the next 5 years, you're going to have phenomenally powerful computing devices for 5,000 rupees and possibly unlimited internet. So you don't build solutions that work right now. You have to sort of look at where the future is going to converge and build solutions that make sense a little bit into the future, not just as of now.
Gnanish,
So primarily, I would say yes. The cost is always going to be concern. Now, our focus always has been K-12 schools, not the higher education, where the cost is always going to be a challenge. Therefore, we can't expect everything to switch on to the technology or digital education. I would rather say, my experience or our reading says that globally, in K-12 space, only digital hasn't worked, nor only print has worked. So the blended education is going to be the way forward for K-12 segment. And that is the area I would suggest everyone to really focus on. Just don't provide technology.
Venal, we talk to a lot of social entrepreneurs on our show. And I want to understand from you that, a lot of the social entrepreneurs that we speak with are in the field of education, and there's a lot being done in education. But we were talking earlier about why the gap really in education is being filled by not-for-profits like yourself. Can companies make money, and therefore can we see more companies participating then in education?
I definitely think if you're able to find the right solution, you can find a way to make profits while catering to people who need it the most. And I think that's where I've noticed people take the social entrepreneurship route because they want to cater to people who need it the most. But I think we have to build that orientation that you can do both, right? And I think that definitely is a way to do both. You have to just find the right solution to the problem. And I think in a way that's the exposure we're trying to provide at Teach for India, where we bring in people for 2 years, say teach in a government school, teach in a low-income private school full-time. So through that, what they realize is where is the actual gap. Is it in the infrastructure, is it in the curriculum, or is it in teacher training? And then they move out and they actually solve for that. So we have some people getting into the more social business side where they notice that there are no science labs in government schools. So they've created a mobile kit where you get very, very low cost materials to do all sorts of experiments. And schools are buying it. Or even teacher training. There are alumni of our program who have gone there and said, we will do this certain teacher training and improve the teacher quality by this much. And schools are paying for it. Very, very low fee schools are paying for it. So I think if we're able to create a product that's actually going to shift learning in schools, people are able to see that, then they will pay for it. Obviously, I think the responsibility is on these entrepreneurs to find that right solution and make it affordable as well.
Is there any government help that comes in? For example, you're talking about the mobile kits. That's a clear business opportunity. But is there any government funding for these programs?
It varies. Currently, there's more private funding that exists than government funding. I think the government definitely has the money. They need to say where is the best place to spend it. At this point, it's more private funded though.
Okay, so speaking of funding, I want to talk to you about whether you've raised funds either at Prepathon or at Pagalga, and what the experience has been, and your advice for our viewers on how they can go about raising funds.
So we raised funds in Prepathon. Our investor is a company called Bloom Ventures, and it was a very interesting experience because we were able to sort of raise funds a little bit easier because we had a track record of building Pagalga over the last decade. The challenges for any new entrepreneur in the space is that EdTech has a massively long gestation period. Any company which would be successful in 5 years in any other space, I think possibly in education, is going to be a 15-year run. So I suspect that is one of the key challenges that possibly investors are looking for. That listen, will this company survive the next 10, 15 years? And the second big thing is, whatever these next generation entrepreneurs are building, will it truly provide a certain level of scale and exit that these investors are looking for? So those two problems need to be sort of solved by the entrepreneurs. Will we survive over a long period of time? And secondly, do we have a product that really grows fast and provides those returns?
Gnanish, do you want to tackle that question and maybe advise our viewers about what they should keep in mind if they're in the market for funds?
Okay, as an investor, I can say we have been receiving lots of requests for investment in EdTech sector in particular. Somehow we aren't really seeing the scale. Most of that is on the paper. Nothing is proven. So we need some experience, or as he said, rightly said, for at least couple of years experience, have successfully used by the users, and we should see a scale. Unless investor sees a scale, they are not really going to accept your proposal.
One thing that I heard both Allwin and Venal, both of you saying, is that the availability of qualified teachers, for example. We have a call-in show on the Leaders of Tomorrow, and a lot of the people who write to us say that they don't find the appropriate technically qualified people, the people that they're picking up directly from colleges. And I assume that is a challenge which exists in the field of education as well. What advice do you have for our viewers on how that can possibly be solved? What exists right now? Not-for-profits like yourself perhaps are working closely with teachers to train them. Can technology be used to solve this issue as well?
As I said, our focus is K-12 segment. I believe right education delivered to in a right manner in the primary level of education itself is going to make a big change going forward, maybe in secondary or maybe in the higher secondary. So I agree with him that in higher education there is much faster growth potential, but as a country in India, we also need to focus on primary education, and there technology can play a big role where government with the private, they can really make a big change.
Okay, fair enough.
I think the biggest gap is that our education right up to, like, if you're talking about teachers, then even B.Ed and primary is all within a classroom. There is no application component of it. So you're becoming a teacher sitting in a room being a student. So you're not really training to be the teacher. And things are very segregated. There's no integration. Like when you see rain, you're not able to say this is science and that part is geography and this is civics, right? It all happens together. But that's not how we teach. So I think what will shift it is when we're able to add in more application of that content. We are trying to use technology for teacher training. So we have a model called Firki where we're trying to do courses online from what we've seen be successful while training our fellows, and we're putting it online in different languages for teachers to access. So it's very early stage, but we're hoping that that will help us see success with teachers not from the backgrounds our fellows come from and how quickly they're able to adapt to these methods as well.
Okay, as we're winding down this conversation, I know that we can't run through all the challenges and all the solutions for the field of education in a country like India. Maybe I'd like to ask you to give one piece of advice for our viewers. I'd like to start with you, Venu. From your experience, one piece of advice that you'd like to leave our viewers with.
I would say understand the problem by spending time with the problem and asking people what they need. If you're catering to the students, ask them what they want. So just really understanding the problem before you jump to a solution.
Okay. One piece of advice that you've perhaps received in your professional career, Allwin, that has changed the way you think about things, and what advice for our viewers?
I think when it comes to education, the biggest problem that we sort of traditionally come across is most of the technology that is available out there makes the lives of teachers a little bit more harder, which is sort of not the promise of technology and efficiency. So as long as you can make people's life easier, I think there is definitely, people will adopt it on their own. You sort of have an Uber, you have an Ola. As long as it makes your life easier, people tend to sort of adopt these technologies. But the current state of technology is that, a teacher needs to do whatever they need to do, and plus they need to sort of scan stuff or sort of use a mobile app. That makes their life a little bit more complicated than usual. So focusing on easing their life so that they can sort of reach out to more students, I think that's the way to sort of look at technology and solve these problems.
Okay.
And I agree with her that we need to provide a user-friendly product. So a company, an entrepreneur should really understand the problem well, make the product so well that it is user-friendly. That is the fundamental thing that any entrepreneur should really be taking care of. Then rest, everything will follow positively.
All right, thank you all very much for coming in today and talking to our viewers about really what the challenges and opportunities exist today. And we've been talking about how you, the MSME entrepreneur, can participate more in the field of education. Do remember, if you have a company that wants to be featured on our show, you can write in to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT. You can tweet at me personally. My Twitter handle is Sunanda_J, or you can call us on that number that you see flashing on your screen. We promise to have all your queries answered. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.